Hey guys, welcome back. Today I am going to be reading some bad Goodreads reviews of my favourite books ever, which is going to be a bit horrible because I don't want to hear them speaking badly of, but I think it will be entertaining nonetheless, so I hope you stick around. I obviously want to say as well, like, this is just my opinions and these people's opinions. Obviously they're going to be different. Everyone reads things differently, everyone likes different things. Just bear that in mind. And also thank you for 60 subscribers. Just to let you guys know, there will probably be spoilers, so if you're planning on reading any of these books in the near future, just skip over them to the next one. The first book we're going to be talking about is The Troop by Nick Cutter, which is genuinely, I think, the best horror book of all time. Maybe not the best, but one of the best. I was genuinely hooked from the start to the finish. I thought the writing style was so good. I thought the story was really good. And I'm really curious as to why people didn't enjoy this. But I think I may have some ideas, to be fair. Okay, the first one that I've got here is I had expectation for this book and it just did not deliver. It's less horror and more grotesque for the sake of being grotesque. It was boring, the characters sucked, and the delivery was just off. Couldn't wait for it to be over. Also, my dog chewed on the cover and all I could think was good riddance. Okay, so we got quite a lot to unpack here. It's being less horror and more grotesque for the sake of being grotesque. I feel like, is there not a genre of horror that is just gore? I feel like it's just a different style, which you might not like, and that's fair, but I think to say that it's not horror because of it is probably a little bit redundant, maybe. It was boring. I definitely did not find it boring at any point. Actually, I won't say anything because I don't want to spoil it, but this really isn't the kind of book that I would ever describe as boring. The characters sucked, I can kind of see that, but they are teenage boys, so that kind of comes with the territory. And the delivery was just off. Like I said, I love the writing style, so I don't know what she read in it, but maybe it's just not her thing. Couldn't wait for it to be over. The dog chewing on the cover, that's quite funny. I'll give her that. That's funny. And I hope her dog enjoyed, because she obviously didn't. On to the next one. The book, like the characters, should be quarantined on a remote Canadian island. Again, this is quite a funny one, so I can't even be that mad, but I just really personally love this book, and the fact that people, they're not even giving it 2 stars, they're not even giving it 3 stars, they're giving it 1 star. That is the lowest of the, that's like, basically, like, this was one of the worst things you've ever read. Like, for me to give a book 1 star, it has to be really, really bad. Anyways, The Troop did not scare me, it did disgust me. The explicit descriptions of animal torture were too much for me. I don't recommend it and wish I could scrub its memory from my brain. I feel like this is the only, like, valid complaint, because if you don't like reading those graphic kind of things, then obviously you're not going to like this book. But I feel like when you go into reading a horror book, you kind of should almost expect these things, and if you don't want to read them, you should check before. When I read the animal torture scenes, it reminded me of It by Stephen King, and obviously no one's ever had any complaints about that book. I feel like this is a valid argument, but at the same time it's part of the horror genre. Okay, on to book number 2. We've got The Shining. I love this book. I love Stephen King. It's one of Stephen King's best. It's wonderful. It's got great writing, it's got a great story, great characters, all of the above. So let's see what people are saying about this one. I just woke up from the coma I slipped in from reading this terribly dull book. That's not great. My thing would be, when is it dull? It's quite action-packed. There's always stuff going on. And when there isn't, I feel like his writing style gives you such a sense of, like, something's going to happen. There's so much tension that, for me, I never felt like there were dull moments because I was always anticipating something happening. But if you don't get on with his writing style, then maybe you would find it dull. I don't know. Okay, next one. Just could not get through it. Sadly, not my genre. And maybe I just can't sympathise with a man with anger issues who lets everything out on his wife and 5-year-old son. I don't know if the point of the book was to sympathise with a man with anger issues. I'm not sure that this is the kind of book you read it and you're like, I feel really like me and Jack Torrance are one of a kind. Not sure that was the point. Maybe give it another read. I would say to this person. Okay, last one. Watching grass grow is more entertaining than this. Again, with the boring, I don't get it. For me, this book was not boring. I know it's long, but it wasn't boring. But maybe you guys did find it boring. Tell me if you found this book boring. Okay, the next one is The Stepford Wives by Ira Levin. And I absolutely love this book. I think it was short, snappy. It made point. I was definitely feeling really scared for the main character in this. Classify it as horror 100%. I'm excited to see what people have to say about this, but it has been a while since I read it, so if I misremember anything, please ignore it. Okay, first one. Not a good read at all. I found it predictable. Failing to see why this book is a horror or a thriller. I'm glad it was short. 1 star was generous. I think this book is considered a horror because there's things happening in it that are really scary, and I would say it's definitely a thriller because I found it thrilling. I don't really know what book this woman was reading, and I don't know what genre she would classify it under because it's definitely not romance. I guess it could be a little bit sci-fi, but I don't think that's the main point of it at all. Finding it predictable, I didn't personally, but I think some people may have. But I don't think that takes away from the thriller part of it because you're wondering whether she's going to be able to escape. And I feel like that's the exciting part of the plot, not trying to work out what's happening as much. Anyways, on to the next one. I think it's funny that people say that this book is a feminist novel. I don't see anything that makes it one. In fact, I see things pointing the exact opposite way. Also, there wasn't really an ending. I was left to make assumptions. The introduction had to explain to me what happened. Oh well, at least the book wasn't that long. On the feminist point, I don't really know what I have to say about that because obviously I said I read it a long time ago, and when I read it, I wasn't really reading it through like a feminist lens. I was reading it through just a, is this a good thriller horror book lens? And to me, it was that. But looking back on it, I don't really see why it couldn't be considered a feminist novel because I think the points in it probably do stand in a more feminist way. And some people like acting like the author was one of the guys in Stepford and he wanted all this to happen, but I don't think that was the point of it either. I'd have to read it again from that like point of view and see if I could find anything that said to the contrary of it being feminist. But the other points in here, there wasn't really an ending. It was kind of a cliffhanger, but I think it's pretty clear what happened to her. And a lot of people have said about the introduction, apparently it like spoils the whole plot, which isn't great, but that's not the author's issue, that's the publisher's issue. So that can't really be put to blame on the book. The last one I've got here is, so does it actually explain what the heck's going on in Stepford, or am I dumb? I feel like maybe just give this ending another read, because as far as I'm aware, it did explain it pretty clearly. Maybe she means like the other person meant like the cliffhanger. Maybe that's something a lot of people didn't really get along with. I know that sometimes happens where people don't like it and more of an open ending. They like everything tied up in a neat little bow, but personally that isn't something I'm worried about. The last book I have on here is Nosferatu, which is by Joe Hill, who is Stephen King's son. If you didn't know, it's going to become clear from some of these reviews, I'll tell you that. But me personally, I absolutely love this book. It was one of my favourite books that I read at all last year. I thought it was a really, really excellent story. I found that I got thrown into it quite easily. I ended up reading it quite quickly because I was really intrigued by the plot and what was going to happen. I quite like the writing style as well. I thought it was good. But yeah, let's see what the reviews have to say, because as we have already seen by now, my reviews are not always the same as other people's. DNF about halfway through. I couldn't care less if every character died. Why use a pseudonym if you're going to write books exactly like your father's? Now, this is something I don't agree with at all. I don't think this book was at all similar to anything Stephen King's written. I thought the style was very different. And I thought, obviously, there were like some parts that alluded to Stephen King, but I thought it was more of like an homage rather than copying. Like when he had the Pennywise land or whatever it was on the map, I think that was maybe just like a nod to his father. He didn't actually copy any of the concepts, in my opinion. I couldn't care less if every character died. If you can't relate to the characters, I do understand that could be frustrating. I personally didn't remember finding them particularly annoying when I read this. I thought they all seemed pretty likeable. Obviously not the villain, but the protagonist, yeah, I thought she was alright. So it just goes to show how everyone reads things like differently. This next one, nasty book for little freaks. If that's you, then enjoy. Okay, moving on. Okay, do we just do this now? Joe Hill writes like Stephen King. Then Joe Hill has a kid who writes like Joe Hill, and so forth, while critics and readers keep raving about a fresh new voice in horror. And we just never talk about how clearly SK just did a deal with some demon for some warped form of immortality. Well, sounds like this person should be a writer themselves from this imaginative idea. Maybe it is. Maybe that is what he's done. But like I said, I don't think his writing reflects him in any way. And I've read another one of his books as well, Joe Hill's that is, and it wasn't good at all. It didn't reflect anything, especially not a good author. But I did really like this one, and I didn't think it was like anything Stephen King's ever written at all. I don't really get where people are seeing the similarities, but if that's what you feel, that's what you feel. We'll have to wait until Joe Hill has a kid and they start writing, and we'll see if it's anything like that. We'll have to stay tuned. Guys, I actually thought I was done filming, but then I realised there was another book that I forgot to do. So apologies if the camera angle has changed a little bit, but that book is Cujo. So the first review says, super mid book. There was no chapters, and I believe I would be fully capable of surviving Cujo. I did not find this book mid. I thought it was incredibly emotional. I got so upset at the end. There are kind of chapters. They're not traditionally done, but there are chapters. And I believe I would be fully capable of surviving Cujo. I don't think he would. The dog, it is massive and rabid and massive. The next one said, what the hell happened to Stephen King that could make him write a book like this? Don't get me wrong, the writing was excellent as usual and scary as hell, but I haven't ugly cried like I did in reading the last 10 pages of this book in a long time. Not just the poor kid and destruction of a family who loses a child, but the paragraph about how poor Cujo's ashes were tossed away without care when he would have died to protect his family. Good God, I'm still crying. Heartbreaking. I absolutely do not recommend this book to anyone who has emotions, so don't read it. What I'm reading from this review was actually that it was a really good book. You said the writing was excellent, it was scary as hell, and it made you really emotional. That sounds like a quality book to me. So I get that you're upset, but that is sometimes kind of the point of the books. So I think this can't be really judged as a 1-star review. I hope you guys enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it, and I hope that you guys will consider subscribing and liking the video. And then I'll see you next time. Bye!